Hi, students. This is the third video I've set up for you to watch. This is hopefully the last day, but it may be still Thursday, Friday, even. Just trying to figure out, excuse me, what's going on with my daughter's health. So, uh, like I said, at least it's not jury duty. I will be back soon. Anyway, moving on. The expectations for you guys. So the first day I was away, I left you the folder for organizing your work. Check your drive, plus diagrammatic instructions. Diagrammatic instructions was a significantly shorter assignment. The next assignment was the flowcharts. And if you watch this video, I walked you through it quite efficiently, just like the first one, and just like this one here. I am going to walk you through this somewhat. It's not the hardest task, but I want to make sure that as I go through, there aren't too many questions. For this assignment, you definitely need to do it online. Most assignments, I give you the option. You can definitely try to do them offline on paper or print it off and do it by hand. This one, I really strongly recommend doing it online. So you will need to go back and forth between these timelines and the answer space. These ones here, what you can do is you click on it and open, excuse me, the timeline. The question for the first one is look over the timeline. What does it show and where do they get the dates from? So you're going to get an interesting one here. It's a series of timelines, a series of movies. It's mostly science fiction movies, and it uses dates that are fake dates. So you need to explain this in your answer, but here's the challenge, right? So about a year ago, around the time I put together this assignment, a couple of students were mentioning to me that it was Back to the Future Day. There actually was a day when the movie Back to the Future from 1980 something actually happened in modern day. In a couple of months, or a couple of years, 2 years, you're going to have Blade Runner when it was actually set. Even though the movie Blade Runner happened in or was made in 1982, it was set in 2019, as was The Running Man and Akira. So these are all the times when these stories are supposed to take place. Children of Men, another example. The Terminator is only 12 years away. 12 Monkeys, again, all these movies, they're set in these years. And for this first question, you need to explain that. The second one is very similar, almost exactly the same, to be honest. And the question is basically asking you, what do you like better? And you need to give explanations. What I usually do to show students that there are some awesome similarities is I go to that 2019 stretch, and so I'm almost there. You go to the 2019 year, and you'll see in here they mentioned Blade Runner. So Blade Runner in a polluted, rainy LA, former Blade Runner, and there may be some ads here and there. That's unfortunate. So this is the entry for Blade Runner on that timeline, and excuse me, on this timeline, I did show you the timeline for Blade Runner. It's right here. So the idea being, which timeline do you like better? What's the reason why you like or prefer one one over the other? So that's the first two questions. The third one is again a timeline, and this one's interesting because it tells a fictional story. Some of you may have seen this story, The Fault in Our Stars. It's a pretty interesting way to set up a timeline. And again, you're flicking through this when you're not. You don't really need to read it in detail to be able to answer the question. The question is, though you have not read this story, how does this timeline help casual readers? And why are there no actual times or dates listed? And again, you don't need to look at it in super detail, but it gives you the idea. This is timeline in a different format, and work on the answer to this question. So why are there no actual times or dates listed? Next, we're looking at a historical timeline. This one is really challenging. So this one is the origins or the timeline of World War One, beginning basically when Hitler takes charge of Germany. And the most important thing about this is when you start looking at some of these dates and some of the significant elements, you can really see a lot of parallels to other historical events that were like this particular world event. Pretty dangerous, pretty scary, especially things like people are ordered to register their wealth and property. People are prohibited from or forced to register their businesses. All these events leading up to the Kristallnacht, when essentially Jewish people lost their everything. I mean, there was nothing left. So the bottom line here is this is a pretty detailed timeline with a lot of connections and links to it. And that's what the questions show. So what does this timeline represent? At the top, it says jump to. What does that mean? And again, some of these things are more internet savvy things. There's the word jump to. What does that mean? And then the really big question is, in 1939, there's an entry labeled Hitler threatens Jews. Look at it. Why is it highlighted in blue? And what is the symbol right after it? Also, I recommend clicking on that symbol. It's a bizarre scenario, a bizarre speech. Oh, I just helped you with the answer. Anyway, that timeline is another one to look at in some detail. Again, all of this stuff we're doing here is to get you better acquainted with various graphic texts. Timeline is a really significant and important one. This one here is interesting. It gives you a musical aging timeline. It's an interesting one. It gives you pictures of rock stars before and after, I suppose, or when they were most popular, when they started off, and what they look like now. So the question here is, do you think this should be called or considered a timeline? And what about other before and after shots? So that's another pretty interesting and important question. The last one on this list, and I believe this is the final question, is this is a huge timeline. This timeline has stories on it, and you can zoom in really close on this. I've chosen a pretty zoomable image version of this image. And it's neat because it starts here at the words fear and wonder. This is the history of science fiction. And as you kind of grow from it, you have Gilgamesh, which was a story written about 3,500 years ago, give or take. Could be as far as 4,000 years old. Then you have Plato about 2,400 years ago, also give or take. But you have these interesting origins, and then as time goes on, you have these stories grow and expand, and layers of things like Frankenstein, till finally you get up to horror stories, Star Wars, Star Trek, all these new kinds of styles of movies.